Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Hello. All right, I'm going to change my name here while Zoom is bringing y'all on. Heather, that's me. Good morning. Welcome to Confident Communication. I'm Heather Flake. I'm here on behalf of Life Coach University. So stoked to be here. This lighting is like so weird. Anyways, I'm so excited to be here. Okay, let's make sure that my audio good. Thank you so much. Okay, while everyone is coming on, let me orient you in a few little things. So no one can see you, no one can hear you. So if you're in the bath, it's totally fine. Enjoy yourself. Just lock your door. If you have a question, if you want to participate, if you have something that you want to share that pertains to confident communication, click below. You'll see the two little text bubbles, Q&A. That's where we hang out. Also, if you'd like some coaching, if there's something that you want to ask me or work through, that's where you go. So you'll just go into the Q&A box, you can type it, and I'll address your question or your concern on this call. So that's kind of how we roll here. So like I said, I'm here on behalf of Life Coach University, and we just work on a pay it forward platform. So the whole mission of Life Coach University is to get coaching to millions more. And so we offer these free pay it forward talks. So we just ask that as you come and you participate, that you pay it forward in the world in whichever way that you see fit. One of my dear friends is actually on this call, and I'm just remembering, I'm thinking about pay it forward. I remember one time we had gone to a splash pad together with our little girls and we were playing, and then we left, and it was so funny because we didn't tell either, like we didn't know we were going to do this, but I'm telling Lily, I'm like, oh, like, let's go get a drink or let's go get a treat or something. Anyway, so we go to this drive-through, and then my friend was right in front of us. And so we were just cracking up. And then I get up to the window and the lady's like, oh, like that woman paid for your treat. Just so awesome. Anyway, so pay it forward. It feels really good. It'll release some endorphins and you'll be like, wow, I'm an awesome human. So, all right, my friends, shall we? Let's do this thing. Okay. Confident communication. So I'm just going to kind of share with you, when I say confident communication, this is kind of what I think of. I think it's the ability to say what you want to say in a way that resonates with you, in a way that you feel good about, not guilty for or ashamed of. I think it's having the courage to say something. And again, so I mostly work with women on their marriage. So, but this confident communication can apply to anyone that you have a relationship with, anyone that you're trying to improve your ability to communicate with. Okay. But there will be some things that I share in the context of marriage, but it can apply to any relationship. But maybe in your marriage or with a friend or with a coworker, when things are just off or weird and you just don't really know what to say, you don't know what to do, you don't know how to get things back to where they were, how to make things better. I think confident communication is that. It's like having the courage to say something and not necessarily like saying it beautifully or right, but just being like, yo, things feel weird. Okay. I think confident communication is a belief that whoever the other person is that you're in a relationship with, that you believe that you guys can figure things out through communication. Okay. And communication also is not just talking and listening. Communication involves body language. Communication involves when you're not saying anything at all. There's so many aspects of communication, and we're talking about all of that. Okay. I think another big part of confident communication is believing that what you have to say matters and practicing what you have to say and what you think. And again, being willing to say the hard things sometimes. Confident communication also includes no. I think sometimes it's so hard for us to say no. Have you ever found yourself in that situation where someone's asking you to do something and you hear these words, you hear with your ears the word yes, but your insides are screaming, do that? Oh. And you're just like, yes, yeah, that'd be great. Where do I sign up? So we're going to talk about how to say no when it's a no for us, right? Without making it mean that you're bad or you're selfish or you are not a good person. Okay. So I would love to hear from y'all. What are your struggles when it comes to communicating? What are some of the things that maybe some of the areas in which you feel stuck? What makes communicating hard? And maybe what is it that you're hoping to get from class today, from this coaching call together? I will share this with you. One of mine is just that, like I was talking about, this happened to me on Tuesday. It was kind of a weird day. There had been lots of like emotions and things going on. And then that night I was sitting by my husband and it was just like, there was just like this wall. And I didn't necessarily know why. Like we hadn't had an argument. I wasn't upset, but it was just like this tangible, like, this is awkward. But what did I do, y'all? Said nothing. I was just like, gonna read my book and go to bed. So that's something that I'm always trying to work on, is just having the confidence to be like, yo, this is weird right now. Because a lot of the times I don't do that because my brain tells me, listen, if you tell your husband that you're feeling weird, he's going to be like, well, why? What's going on? And I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on. It just feels off. And I don't necessarily know why. I don't necessarily have a good reason. So in my brain, I think, well, I can't say something's wrong if I don't know what's wrong. And I just decided this week that I made that up, I don't want to subscribe to that anymore. So Devin and I were talking about that. The next day I was just like, listen, I feel like things are weird. And I'm one of those people, like if I go to bed mad or like annoyed or in a weird state, generally 8 hours later, whatever, when I wake up, I feel the same way. I'm not one of those like sleep it off kind of people in a lot of situations. So I was just telling him, I was just like, listen, I feel like yesterday was super weird. Like, I feel like there's a wall between us. I don't really know why. I just need you to know that I know. And for me, like that's a step. That's confidently communicating that, hey, I know it's weird. Not completely sure why. I'm trying to figure it out. I see you. Okay. I'm going to pop in the Q&A here. What are you saying, my friends? Okay. Someone says, my partner hates me now. He wants to leave. He's so mean to me now. I'm so sorry. Well, listen, I'm going to share some things today that I hope will really help you. But even with that, my partner hates me now. He wants to leave. That's all with him. So I want you to tap into you. That's another thing. We are not on this group coaching call so that then we can leave and be like, okay, husband, I made a list of all the things that I feel like you can improve, right? This is for us. We are here so that we can improve ourselves. We're here so that we can get and feel a little better about our ability to communicate, to show up, to be present, to listen. So you can just start with yourself. Okay. Why are you telling yourself that your partner hates you? How do you feel about these things? If he's so mean to you, you can ask yourself, okay, like why am I still here? Just like check in with yourself and give yourself an opportunity to understand what's going on for you, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're showing up. Okay. Someone says, for me, it's about not wanting to hurt someone. Yeah. Or make them feel uncomfortable. I'd rather have it be worse for me than them. I totally get that. And I think too, that also plays into when we say no, we say yes when we mean no, or even vice versa. Maybe we say no when we mean yes. That's interesting because we do that too. I do that. Yeah, I think that part is so interesting. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, right? And we don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. We would rather just feel uncomfortable, and we would rather be the ones that have a story and words and maybe even dreams and truths. We would rather keep those things to ourselves and let them lie dormant instead of giving them a chance to live and to come to life. So let's talk about that as well. I think there's something called the preface that I'm going to share with you today that I think can be helpful. And also recognize you can't hurt someone's feelings. Now, if you've been in life coaching or you follow some life coaches, you've probably heard that. And I discovered this caveat a few years ago that I kind of developed that has really helped me with that, because it's like, okay, but even though I know that I can't hurt someone's feelings, I don't want that to mean that I just go around acting like a B word and that's fine. It's like, no, because that's not who I want to be. So listen to this. You are not in charge of how someone else feels, but you care how people feel. Like that kind of just like brings it into a hug for me. I'm like, yes, I recognize that I'm not in charge of how anyone feels, and I can't make anyone feel love. I can't make anyone feel hurt or annoyed. Now, if that's our intention, if it's our intention to hurt someone and make them feel bad, I mean, yeah, we're probably going to be successful. But ultimately, anytime we feel an emotion, anytime we feel hurt or we feel sad, we feel betrayed, we feel excited, we feel angry, it is because of a sentence in our head. Our thoughts create how we feel. So the good news is your words cannot make someone feel horrible. You say words, and that's a circumstance. And then whatever that person thinks about your words will create how they feel. Does that make any sense at all? And we can touch a little more on that. But I think that's important to remember. I'm not responsible for how you feel, but I care about how you feel. And I've found that helps us be more of who we want to be. And that's the thing. I think it's rare when we are just mean and ugly because we want to stick it to someone. Does that happen? Have we done that? Yes. Have I done that? Yes. Right. But I think overall, it's not like our intention is to hurt people and to make them upset and mad. And the good news is you can't actually do that. Everyone is in charge of their emotions because they're created by their thoughts. Okay, someone else says, my hubby is hard to communicate with. He doesn't talk much. I talk too much. How can I meet him in the middle? I love this. Okay, we're also going to talk about just like style and preferences and knowing this person. So in this scenario, obviously it's your partner, right? It's your spouse. And I think it's really important to take that into consideration, to just know it's the same in my marriage. My husband is a huge talker. He'll share all the things. Like I think about when we sit down and he's like, hey, how was your day? If I say, hey, how was your day? He will literally tell me all the things, like lots of detail. And then he'll be like, how was your day? And I'm like, good. And he's just staring at me. He's like, I'm like, I don't know. It was good. And that's just kind of like a personality preference thing. Like he shares a lot. I don't necessarily always share a lot. So I think even just knowing that, even knowing like, hey, my partner is a little more on the quiet side. They don't tend to share all the things, and I do. I think if you can just know that and you can have some awareness around it and you can even bring that to the table. Like that's something Devin and I just are always working on and talking about. And we'll even talk about that. And sometimes it's awkward and it's messy and I don't really have answers that I'm sure he wishes I had. But he'll just be like, what, like, why do you just say good? Like, what's that about? Or we've even discovered, I need you to ask me something different. When you say, how are you? I'm just like, fine. Like everyone's fine. Like who actually says how they are? Very few people. I do have one friend that's so good at this. When I'm like, hey, how are you? She'll be like, dude, I'm so mad. I'm so tired. Just want to go to sleep. And it's like so refreshing. I'm always just like, good, great. So squirrel. But if you come back to that, so maybe it's figuring out, okay, are there different questions that I can ask you? Or what is it? Like, do you not share things with me because maybe you don't feel comfortable? Do you feel like I don't really give you enough space to talk? I think the whole goal of today, you guys, is bringing more intention and awareness to the area on which you're trying to improve in your communication. So whether that's with a spouse or a child, and that's the other thing I would encourage you to do right now is have a relationship in mind. Right? Are you wanting to have more confident communication with a spouse, with a child, a teacher, a coworker, your Heavenly Father? Like, who is it? Right? Have a relationship in mind, because then the things that we talk about, you can more directly apply. But again, how can I meet him in the middle? I think it comes down to you thinking about that and bringing the other person in and being like, hey, you know what I've noticed? I talk a lot. You don't. And I feel like that, like it's making our communication hard. What's your thoughts about that? Like pull them in. And even if they're like, I don't know, I think our communication is great. You can be like, okay. And you can just start with yourself. I think it's really beautiful. So even you, friend, where you're like, my hubby is hard to communicate with. The first thing I want to tell you, that's just a thought. And as long as this is your story and your narrative, we're sorry, you might have lost me for a minute, but it's like, that's the lens through which you're going to see him. My husband is hard to communicate with. And so even when he tries to say things or you try to say things, if the story is he's hard to communicate with, that's always going to come through. So I love to share this. Your husband's not hard to communicate with. It's just like my husband and I communicate, and this is how. And if you want it to look differently and you want it to look better, whatever better is for you, that's perfect. Just paying attention to it is going to make all the difference in the world, because sometimes we just put things on the shelf. We're just like, yeah, like, I don't know. He just doesn't really share that much. He's hard to communicate with. And then that demotivates us from trying to work on it. Does that make sense? I love y'all. Thank you so much for sharing so many things. Okay. My husband talks too much. Sorry. So this is someone else saying, my husband talks too much. Sometimes I think, when is he going to stop talking? I think that too. Okay. But that's something that I've tried to learn, because again, I will think that, and then I notice myself like kind of withdrawing from the thing. So maybe I like get on my phone or I do the dishes, and like he can be talking to me, and up here I'm like thinking about, what are they serving in the cafeteria tomorrow, and is my kid going to want to eat that, and what time do I get to go to bed because I'm really tired. And then he's looking at me, and people know. That's the other beautiful thing. People know when you're really not there, when you're checked out and you're not listening. And it's okay. You just want to be aware. So again, this is a thought. My husband talks too much. That's something that you just think is gospel truth and you believe it. And I get it because I can relate, but really that's just hindering you from the communication that maybe you want. So maybe it's from let's take out the qualifiers, and it's just like, my husband talks, right? And when you're thinking, oh, like, when is he going to stop? You could even just answer it back and be like, I don't know, but let's check back in. Maybe he's talking about something fascinating, or maybe you could get curious. I wonder why my husband does talk so much. And why don't I talk as much? If you can just like introduce curiosity and fascination, you'll get so much more traction. Okay. All this is so good. So keep putting things in. Oh, I'm going to read this other one. Okay. Someone says, I'll feel so proud of myself for communicating a desire/need, and then I feel really disappointed if my husband doesn't follow through. Yeah. How do I get to a place where I'm okay with whether or not he does what I want? Beautiful. Thank you for bringing that up. I think we just have to recognize this. We can't control anyone, but we can make requests all day long. And I think especially in a marriage relationship, we just assume that, hey, because we have this desire or this need, and because we've asked you nicely, you're my husband, you're my wife, and you should do it. If you loved me enough, if you really cared, you would do it, and you would show up and you would do the thing, right? But that's just, no, that just sets you up for so much resentment and hurt, because then if they don't do the thing, you're making it mean, see, they don't care about me. They don't even really love me. So you just get to realize this. Humans, adults, they get to do whatever the heck they want. So do you. So I think it's just helpful to know, like, hey, I can make requests of my husband, my wife, my piano teacher, whatever. But whether or not they follow through, I have no control over. Okay. So when you ask, you put the request out there, and then if he doesn't follow through, you know what you can do? You can just feel disappointed without making it mean that something's wrong with you or something's wrong with him. Okay. And you could get curious if it's helpful, like, I wonder why. You can talk to your spouse, because a lot of the times when that happens, that shuts us down, and we're just like, okay, never going to ask them for anything ever again, ever. And then we're resentful and we're slamming cupboards and we're rolling over and not talking to them. And we're just like, good night. Right. So then we make further communication, or the ability to get what we think we need, we put that farther away from us. So instead, it's just like, that's interesting. Okay. How could I try this again? Or even just talking about it. That's going to be awkward. That's going to be hard. But I want you to recognize you already feel awkward. You already feel upset. So I think it's really helpful to do some work on yourself first before you have this conversation. We want to get away as much as possible from reactive conversations and create more intentional conversations. So obviously, friend, like, you're feeling disappointed. So I think it would be helpful to, with you, yourself, and you, figure out why that is. Why am I disappointed? What am I making it mean that he didn't follow through with this request? Get that understanding for yourself, kind of work through it, feel the disappointment. And then you can be like, hey, use I statements. So remember when I asked for this thing? It's totally fine that you didn't do it. Underneath your breath, you're like cussing him out. But I'm just curious as to why. Like, is this something that you want to talk about, that we feel like we can talk about with each other? And just open it up. Because I think another really important thing, the goal of communication in my mind, you guys, is not a solution. It's not to fix the problem. The goal of communication is to come together and connect and communicate and talk about the thing. That's something that I've had to learn. My husband's very good with this idea of just like, hey, like we just put things out on the table and we talk about it, because the actual act of doing that brings us closer together. And I'm like, no, like we have to figure it out. We have to have an answer. And what are we going to do? And so sometimes I'm like, well, if we didn't get an answer, I almost think the conversation was in vain. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Because anytime we have a challenging conversation or just a productive, hard, here's what I'm feeling, here's what I'm thinking, here it all is, and we're able to talk through it, I feel a deeper connection. I feel like more trust. I feel more like belief in our ability to eventually figure this out someday at some point. And that will give you more motivation to keep talking about the things. Okay. So again, friend, don't tie, like you feel proud when you're like, hey, I'm going to communicate something. And then I'm assuming you almost feel kind of rejected because he doesn't follow through with your request. So probably the amount of times you ask for things or you put yourself out there, that probably diminishes. So instead you just want to look at it, and it's like, I would celebrate and feel proud every time that you show up, but I would do it with the expectation of, hey, I'm going to ask, but I know that he doesn't have to do this. And I know that it's likely that he may not do this. And if he doesn't do it, I'm not going to make it mean anything bad about me. Or if I do, once I notice that, I'm going to pay attention to it and work through it. And then if I'm still needing or wanting that thing, I'm going to understand why that is, and then figure out how else could I go about getting it. Does that make sense? But you just want to take more ownership instead of giving it all to your spouse and making your spouse responsible for how you feel. Okay. All right. What else we got, friends? Someone says, I'm going to try feeling disappointed without blaming them. Yeah. Yeah. I actually think that's great, because you know what we call that? We call that clean pain versus dirty pain. Disappointment is a very natural emotion. But even again, you want to tap into your brain and be like, well, what am I thinking that's making me feel disappointed? Right? Because it's a thought. You think it's your spouse. You think your spouse not doing that thing is what's making you feel disappointed. I promise you that's not true, because there's some thought in there of like, he should do what I ask, or if he really loved me, he would comply. That thing is what's making you feel the disappointment. And then, yeah, when you get into blaming, when you get into that pointing the finger game, it gets kind of ugly, right? Just because, again, you're giving all your power to that other person. And the only way you can eventually feel better or move on or work through it is if that person changes, and you have zero control over that, my friend. You're only ever responsible for you, how you think, how you feel, how you act and show up. That's it, right? Okay, someone says, every morning I wake up and my partner has washed up his own dishes. He no longer washes up for me or for the family. I am angry and resentful first thing in the morning. Yeah, so I imagine that's not exactly how you're wanting to feel. So I know this will sound weird, but again, because there we're wanting to blame the partner. And it's like, it is your D word fault that I wake up resentful and angry every morning because you just won't wash anyone else's dishes, right? But that's not true. Okay. Because it's just, and let me show you why. Some wife, some other people, some other spouses, whatever, other humans could wake up and be like, my spouse, my partner did his own dishes. I've got the best partner in the whole entire world. Like, for some people, this wouldn't make them resentful. That's how we know that it's a neutral thing. It's a circumstance. So I want you to ask yourself, why are you so angry and resentful that your partner is doing his dishes and not the rest of the family's? What's this about for you? And again, if you eventually decide to have a conversation with this person, it's going to be so much more valuable if you first can understand you, if you can understand what your resentment and anger is actually coming from, what it's rooted in, instead of having a conversation where you're going to be super reactive, and we've all had those conversations where after it's over and we're just like, Dang it. I didn't mean any of that. That's not what I meant to say, you know? So you first want to understand, well, why? Why are we so mad and resentful that he's doing his dishes? Why is that a problem? What are you making it mean that he doesn't do anyone else's dishes? And that's what's making you angry and resentful, friend, is whatever meaning you're giving to the fact that he doesn't do anyone else's dishes. So that's where you want to start. You want to pay attention to what it's really about for you first. All right. Keep it coming. Y'all are so amazing. Okay, I just have to say this. Oh, you know what? Let's do this first. I'm just going to share a few little things that I think can be helpful. Okay, so we're going to talk a second. I know, and this was already brought up, I know sometimes it's hard to feel like you have a voice or find your voice. Maybe this is because you feel like your partner does a lot of the talking and maybe they have the main voice, or maybe you just feel like it's been so long since you've shared your voice. Maybe you've just fallen kind of into a habit or a cycle where it's just like, yeah, like this partner, this person just does most of the talking. This is just kind of how our relationship goes. So something you can do to get out of that, how you find your voice, is you have to give it airtime, and you yourself have to find your voice. You have to start hearing you. And that just requires a little level of consciousness with yourself. I think about it, or mine here, I think about it as like always streaming something. Okay. Like your brain is always streaming something. For a lot of us, we always have little earbuds in and something is always playing. There's something always playing in your brain, my friends. That's your voice, right? Now, I want to be careful in saying that because sometimes we have these thoughts. I don't want you to think you are your thoughts. You're not. You are not your thoughts. But I think it's really important to pay attention and to plug in to what your thoughts are. What is your voice? Maybe this can be a scenario, like pay attention to the next time you're in a situation where maybe someone asks you your opinion. I always think of the restaurant example. I had a client once, and this has come up a few times, but she would tell me like, Heather, I can't even voice where I want to go for dinner. My husband will ask, well, hey, like, what do you want to eat for dinner? And I find myself saying, oh, I don't care, whatever you want. And then the husband will say, let's say Burger King, for example. And she's like, I freaking hate Burger King, but doesn't say anything. So it's little examples like that. Let's start small, because we've all had this situation where our brain will like think something, but we don't actually say it. Because lots of things, we're scared of what that person is going to think about us. We don't want to come across rude. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, for heaven's sakes. Right? So give your voice airtime. Learn to listen to your inner voice. If you're alone, it's so helpful to say out loud what you are thinking and feeling. You don't need to be ashamed, and you don't need to stuff it down and say, shut up. I always think of this with myself as like, I think about my babies. Like my babies are just my favorite people in the whole entire world. Like I just feel like they literally own my entire heart. And so I think about myself as just like this little child. And every time she comes up to try to say something or tell me something, I'm like, hey, shut up. We don't want to hear that. You can't say that kind of thing here. Like, get down, get back in the basement. Right? It's like, oh my gosh, I would never do that to my kids. So it's like, why do you do that to yourself? So anytime, and you guys, you know this, anytime that little voice comes up and is like, hey, we want this, or we don't want to do that, please don't say yes. Or, hey, you know what? I'm actually thinking this. Learn to give him some airtime. It's going to feel awful if you haven't been doing this. It's going to feel so uncomfortable because you're just not used to it. But that's okay. If you know that ahead of time, if you can expect it to be hard and to be uncomfortable and to be weird, you're going to set yourself up for a greater probability of actually following through, right? If you expect it to feel bad, you can just be like, yep, I knew this would feel weird. We're not used to doing this. It's just like driving on a new road. If you always go on the same road to your house and then all of a sudden that road gets closed or they're doing construction and you have to go a different way, the first few times you're automatically going to go onto that road because it's automatic. And then you're going to be like, oh, snap, I forgot, and turn around. It's like that in your brain. You just kind of have to reroute, retrain your brain. And it doesn't need to be this big dramatic thing. So you find your voice by actually understanding it, by listening to it, giving it airtime, saying out loud what you think and feel, writing it out. I'm a big writer. When I'm struggling, because that's my thing, I have a hard time just like talking and sharing. Again, like when Devin and I are in conflict or something's weird or it's awkward or it's off, I have a very hard time being like, yo, let's chat it out. Whereas my husband's like, hey, like, let's chat, and I'm just like, huh? Like, I don't want to chat. I'm not ready to do that. I have to like process and understand it for myself first. And then I can be like, okay, I'm ready. Okay. That's completely fine. Write out your thoughts and feelings. Tap into yourself. A really, really good way. My clients hate this more than anything because it's uncomfortable. When I have a client that's like, oh, I don't know. I don't even know what I want. I don't even know what my voice is anymore. I make them write down 25 things that they want. And it's really hard for a lot of them. They're like, I don't know. I haven't thought about what I wanted in forever. And it's just kind of a little way to kind of get that inner you to emerge and to listen to him or her, to pay attention, because we've just been stuffing them down in the basement for so long and shutting them up. So of course it's going to be awkward to be like, hey, you can come out of the basement now. You're going to be like, you're going to be afraid because you're scared you're going to get hit down again, right? So it's going to take a little courage. It's going to be uncomfortable, but if you can expect that, it's a little different. I mean, it makes it a little easier. And then just start small. So it's just like, if you rarely say where you actually want to go, just start practicing being like, hey, you know what? It's In-N-Out for me. I'd like to go to In-N-Out. Then I can already hear you like, well, what if your husband hates In-N-Out? He's like, I don't want to go to In-N-Out. Completely fine. You can just be like, well, I'm very proud of myself for sharing my opinion. You can be a fighter. You can be like, well, hey, how about we go to In-N-Out for me? We can go to Wendy's for you, and we can listen to a fun podcast or some songs on the way. Like there's always a way. I love adopting this belief, and I really do believe that like there's always a way to figure this out. And that's a big part of confident communication, is believing we will figure this out. It doesn't matter how long it takes us. It doesn't matter if it's the course of our entire marriage. I just think you build so much connection and resilience and strength and growth and love for each other when you're like, you know what? We're back. We're at it again, trying to figure this out. Like, I don't know, that I just think that speaks volumes to your relationship. Okay, I'm going to tap into the Q&A really quick. Okay. Someone says, the scary thing is that my little voice says he wants to leave. Let him leave. This marriage was the biggest mistake in my life, but I don't want to listen to my little voice. Reality is that it will break my family. Okay, my friend, again, you're really not going to like me or my answer, but I think it's worth paying attention to that voice. Okay. Why are we thinking that this marriage was the biggest mistake of our life? And why are you assuming that he wants to leave? Why are you thinking let him leave? Like, what if I think of this too as like a really dark, damp, dirty, cluttered closet in your house. Okay. And you never open the door, you never turn the light on, you just keep throwing crap in there, and you're just like, not opening that, because if you open the closet door, you're going to feel overwhelmed, you're going to feel ashamed, you're going to feel guilty, you're going to feel bad. So it's like, hello, just don't open the door and then you won't feel bad. But also, that closet will stay the same, if not just get worse, if we never pay attention to it, if we never open it. So I know it can be so terrifying to confront this little voice and the things that it's telling you. But if you can just open up the door and start taking a couple things out and looking at it and just being curious, don't be judgmental with yourself. Okay. That's the last thing you need. You've got to be C-squared. You've got to be compassionate, and you've got to be curious with yourself. Okay. Why am I thinking this? Where is this coming from? Why am I believing this was a big mistake? I think about it too, is just like unloading everything, all your baggage, unloading everything that's in your suitcase and putting it on the table and looking at it and being like, okay, let's unpack. Let's understand what's in this suitcase. And I know that can take courage, but you just get to ask yourself, it's like, okay, so do you want to just stay in this where you are right now? Or do you want to pay attention to it and work through it and give yourself the possibility of it being better, of something happening, of creating a different result? And even this last part, you say, well, reality is that it will break my family. That's just a thought. That's just something that your brain has come up with, and you've just attached to it, and you've made it like the gospel truth. And so, of course, any idea of like entertaining this voice or understanding it or paying attention to it is you're going to shut it right down. What if that's not true? And it's like, what does break the family? What does that mean? Okay, so you want to just take a look at these things that you're thinking and give them airtime, but don't make them mean it's who you are. Does that make sense? I think that is so important. Okay, come back to my little notes here. Okay, so that was the other thing I wanted to address, your belief system. To be a confident communicator and whatever that looks like for you. You guys, that's different for everyone. We all know, or maybe we don't. I want you to just kind of notice and assess where you are today when it comes to communicating with this person that you have in mind. What are your patterns? What are the trends? What cycles are you in? Notice those things, put them out, and then ask yourself with curiosity, why? Why do I do it this way? Why have we fallen into this cycle without any judgment? If you judge yourself, you'll start to feel really crappy and you'll shut down. It's just like, this is so fascinating. I really do like see myself with like a lab coat, a cute like pink lab coat on and a clipboard and a fun pen. And I'm just like taking notes, just observing myself and my brain and my life. And if you're curious, it will give you amazing fuel to better understand what's going on. So you want to tap into your belief system when it comes to how you communicate. What do you think about how you communicate? And I want you to erase the labels. I talk to women all the time that are just like, listen, my husband's a bad communicator. Or, you know, Heather, I do not communicate well. It's never been a strength for me. And I'm like, literally, I don't understand because we've been chatting for 30 minutes for 6 months now. You communicate perfectly, right? That's the other thing. Communication, y'all, is just an exchange of information. We just add so much drama to communication, and we always will. Okay, we're humans. It's what we do best is dramify the house down out of everything. And everything, we make everything about us. It always comes back to us. Okay, but take away labels. You're not a bad communicator. You're not a communicator, but you are a communicator. And your spouse is a communicator, and your mom is a communicator. Okay. And I know that's challenging to do because I'm right there with you. I have people in my life that I'm just like, oof, she's very difficult to communicate with. But that does not serve me. When I believe this person I have in my mind, when I'm believing she's difficult to communicate with, do you know what I do? I don't even try to communicate with her because I've already decided ahead of time that it's not going to work, that I'm not going to be heard, that it's not going to go well. So I don't even take any opportunity to improve my relationship, to gain greater understanding of her, because I'm like, she's very difficult to talk to. Isn't that fascinating? So it's just like, it's like the things that we think, we prove them, we create that result. So you just want to pay attention to that. And also you want to tap into your belief system so it's about yourself and that other person. What do I think about how I communicate? What do I think about how they communicate? And then trippy, what do I think about what they think about how I communicate? Because all three of those factors go into this. We have thoughts about us, we have thoughts about them, then we have thoughts about what we think they think about us. So classic, it's just like, oh, well, he thinks that I'm not good at communicating, so I'm just not going to communicate at all. And he thinks that I really don't have any opinion at all, so I'm just not going to share my opinion. Right. So it's really important actually to tap into what your beliefs are around communication. And then last belief that you could kind of play with is how much do you believe in your ability to communicate, right? Again, that's just like assessing here's where it is today. Here's where I would love for it to be. And really it's just about like little tiny intentional baby steps to get you there. But if you believe that it's not going to work or you're bad at it and there's no hope, those things, you will literally create that. So when my clients have a hard time with this, I'm like, listen, just take out good or bad. Because can you communicate? Can you talk? Well, yeah. Yeah, you can. We talk all the time. Can you hear? Yeah. Do you have a body? You can communicate. Everyone can communicate. Right? And that's the thing. Even when you're not talking, I was thinking that Tuesday night, like when Devin and I were sitting there, like even though neither of us were saying a thing, there's communication happening. Your body's like body language says a lot, I'm like very expressive, like my face will say a lot. So I have to really watch myself because I'll be thinking this thing and then my face like shows the thing. So even if you're not like saying words, you're communicating. Or same when you're listening, your face will show if you're actually listening, if you're being present. Okay. Let me check our Q&A, make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. Okay. Let's talk a second too about courage. I think communication takes courage, right? So how do you get more courage? You just got to practice, just like anything, right? If you play the piano or if you sing or if you golf or if you crochet, at one point when you started it, you weren't good at it. Now, yes, some people just have natural talents and abilities that might give them a slight advantage, but even then they still have to practice and work at it to get to where they want to be. So communicating just takes courage. And I think it's just so beautiful to be intentional with the person you're trying to communicate with on, okay, how are we going to do this? So that's what Devin and I did this week. Like Tuesday was weird. I said something about it Wednesday. I was like, I don't really have the answers. I just wanted you to know that I know. I'm sorry that I was showing up in that way. And then ultimately we just came to, I was like, listen, I feel like we'll get in this pattern, we'll get in this rut where it's weird, but both of us just shut down. Like you get on your phone, I get on my phone, I read, we watch TV, and we're just like ignoring it. So right now my goal is just to call it out and be like, hey, this is weird. This is awkward. That's it. Even if we don't like figure it out or understand, that would be a win for me. I also remember, I'm just going to share this story with you to illustrate a point of intentionality. A couple years ago, when we lived in Tennessee, we would come home for like big Christmas, right? Most commonly. And we would come home for like 2 weeks at a time. And it would be hard because we'd come home and I just feel like our ability to communicate once we were around our other family became really challenging. And just naturally where I have more of a hard time just like opening up and sharing and talking, it became really difficult. So Devin and I were talking about this before we went on our trip, and we were just like, hey, we've noticed like when we go home that we usually start feeling weird and we kind of retreat and we don't really communicate super well, and then we get resentful. So what can we do? And I was just telling him, I was just like, sometimes I can notice things that like you're doing that I get bugged by, or that I'm doing that I'm bugged by, but I don't know how to talk to you about it. Like you just feel kind of like distant. Like it just feels really hard to bring it up. And also like timing. It's like we're around family all the time. Like I feel like I don't really have time to like have a meltdown or talk to you, which isn't true, but it's like thinking all those things put even more pressure on this. So we decided, he was like, hey, what if we had like a physical thing that we could like hold up that just represented, hey, I need to chat. All is not well for me. And I was just like, that is so dumb. He was like, listen, like, let's just give it a try. And so we brought this like toy cow from Lily's like play farm. We brought it home. And I know it sounds so dumb, but it was the talking stick. So at night when we like were together and we were like unwinding or whatever, if someone was struggling, all you had to do was like hold up the cow. I know it sounds so dumb, but it also took a lot of pressure off me because I didn't have to verbalize, hey, I'm upset with you, or hey, I feel like you're not paying attention to what's going on for our family, or I could just hold up this cow and I knew and he knew, oh, we need to check in. We need to chat. So I just share that to show you that you can be creative, that there's no right way. There's no rules. I have some clients that they're like, listen, when my husband and I are in conflict, we text. Is that bad? I'm like, does it work for you? Is it serving your relationship? Like, does it work for you? That's the question. You just get to ask yourself, do you like your reasons for doing it how you do it? Is it working? If it is, fantastic. No one else has to like it. There's no rule book anywhere that says you cannot text your husband to deal with conflict. You can hold up a plastic fake cow to be like, yoo-hoo, not okay, need to chat. So I think it's just kind of fun and I don't know, that intentionality is just like, I love that you're showing like, I care. I know this is hard, but I care so much about what we say, what we don't say. I care that we're trying, and I care, and I don't care necessarily how long it's going to take or when we figure it out, but I care, and I want to keep working. I want to keep trying. Intentionality is so hot, my friends. Okay. Someone says, What a great idea. I'm going to get a big elephant. Yeah, exactly. LOL, make it funny. The big elephant in the room. Love you. Yes. And I think it just gives so much breathing room. Another thing I'm going to tell you that I learned a couple years ago is to schedule it, to schedule communication. I do this especially when, so sometimes something will happen and I'm feeling like upset or annoyed. And my husband doesn't really know. Maybe he hasn't picked up on that. So what do? I get even more annoyed. I'm like, really? You can't tell that I want to beat you up? So I get more mad. And he's just like, I don't know, you're probably on your period or something, right? Like there's no malintent on the other side. So and it's my natural inclination to like turn inward. Like if I'm upset or if something's gone wrong or I'm feeling like conflict or I'm feeling like something's coming up that we need to talk about, but I'm nervous, I will just kind of turn inward. I am not the type to be like, hey, Devin, you know, I'm feeling this way and I'm upset about this thing that happened and I'd like to talk about it. That's not me. But I know that about myself, which is so helpful. I've learned that my tendency is to retreat. He knows that. So helpful because he's learned that he doesn't push me so much anymore. He's not like, hey, we really need to talk about this. I'm like, we'll talk about it when I can talk about it. You know, and we both just had to learn to compromise, to sacrifice. Anyways, schedule it. So you can go on Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, whatever it is that you use. And I just know when there's something that I need to talk about or something that I need to share. It's like a little thorn. You know that thing where it's just like festering and you're like, crap. You know, if you don't take care of it, it's really not going to go away, even though you really keep trying to make it go away. And we can do amazing things. We can drink Diet Coke, we can eat Oreos, we can watch Gilmore Girls, and we can forget for a little bit that it's there, but it'll always come back unless you deal with it. So I'll go on to my Google Calendar and I will send him an invite that just says, let's chat. And I set it for a time and I send him an invitation. Now, one of the main reasons I do this is because now he knows that something's up. It's like a metaphorical cow that I'm sending him like, hey, we need to chat. I do this because if I don't, I will talk myself out of it. You know, it's like I'll run enough miles or listen to enough Ingrid Andress where I can convince myself that, hey, you know what? I've kind of figured this out in my head. I don't need to talk about it anymore. And I've done that. But essentially, again, the results and the connection and the growth and the greater understanding that you and your partner can cultivate when you're willing to have hard and difficult and awkward and conversations like that, I just think it's monumental. So I schedule it. That signals to him, hey, something's not up. And that makes me accountable because now I know he knows and he's going to show up for a conversation. The other amazing thing that this does for me and for my personality and my communication style, I can plan, I can be prepared. I don't always do so well with just like, hey, we need to talk about this thing. Sometimes I can, but sometimes it's just like if I've had a day or there's lots of emotion, I'm just like that I will shut down. So I know that I can get my thoughts out about it first so I can come across as responsible for my emotions and what's going on. My tendency to blame him goes way down because I've understood myself first. I actually understand what the thing is that I'm upset about and why. And I can kind of practice and know, okay, this is what I want to bring to the table and this is how I want to do it. And it makes all the difference. So it may not sound super sexy or fantastic or whatever, but it's so intentional. And I don't know, I've seen great results from doing that. So if you're someone that has a really hard time like saying something about it, schedule it, send your partner an invitation. And then the next thing you use is a preface. Okay. So now your palms are sweaty, your mom's spaghetti. Eminem reference. I kill myself. Anyways, so now it comes time for the conversation. You're nervous. Your heart's beating. You're like, oh crap, maybe I shouldn't actually do this. No, you're going to do it. You're going to be great. You use what's called a preface and you say, listen, I just need you to listen. What I'm about to say might be hard to hear. What I'm about to say may come out really clunky and awkward. And you look at them in the eyeballs. Your phone is nowhere near you. Okay, people, put the damn phone away. You're looking at them and you're just like, listen, but my intention is to never hurt you. I'm actually having this conversation with you because I love you. I really care about you. I care about us. So for the next little bit while I'm talking, I need you to just listen and hear and let me get my piece out. And then I want to hear everything that you have to say. preface. I think it's so beautiful to be like, hey, listen, because remember earlier how someone was saying like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. You just say that. Hey, listen, I'm having this conversation because I care. If you're starting to feel hurt or judged or wronged by me in some way, I'm so sorry. That's not my intention at all. Please just hear me out. I'm responsible for me. But I feel like it's really important that I talk to you about this thing. Are you ready? That can make such a huge difference, and it's so intentional. Okay, let's pop in the box. Thank you so much for the push to be confident to communicate even when it's hard. No, you're so welcome. And it is. I know that it's hard. I'm right there with you. I'm struggling all the time. But I think if you just know that, and again, if you know you and your preferences and your cycles and your tendencies, and you can acknowledge your spouses as well without judgment, right? Oh yeah, my partner tends to talk a lot more. He's better at expressing his feelings and his ideas. He's ready to talk about things a lot sooner than I am. If you can bring all of that into consideration and just be like, oh yeah, this is how he is, this is how I am, and that is not bad. Just because you're different doesn't mean it's bad. I thought that for a long time. Oh, we're pretty different, so this makes things really hard. Hallelujah that we are so different. Makes things way better, way richer, way more broad human life experience. Sign me up. Let's go all in. Different is not bad. If you can just be aware of you, what your styles, your tendencies are, let's take that into consideration of the other person in the conversation. You're already setting yourself up for way more confidence. And then this last piece, I guess there's two last pieces. But have confidence in yourself that what you say and what you think and how you feel matters so much, because it does. For lots of reasons that make sense. It's easy for us to get to a point where like, you know what? Nobody cares what I think, and it doesn't matter what I say, and no one's listening. That's not true. And even if you have a partner or you have a relationship or a person in your life where maybe that is true, they don't listen and they don't want to communicate with you. That doesn't mean that you can't understand you, that you can't communicate with you, that you can't tap in and understand your thoughts and your feelings and your needs, right? That doesn't mean that somebody else needs to meet them, right? You can make requests. They may say no. But if you can gain better understanding for yourself and compassion for yourself, it will open your eyes to all these possibilities that you didn't know existed. But you matter. Your life, who you are, what you have, your gifts, your abilities are so valid and they're so needed. They're so important. You really are uniquely you. There's nobody else like you. And so what you have to say matters. And even if it is a hard thing to say or it's awkward, you can always say it in a genuine, loving, beautiful way if you will think about it first, right? Now, listen, there's always going to be circumstances where we're going to be reactive and we're not going to be proud of how we showed up. So there's this amazing thing you can do as a human. You can apologize. Hey, I was wrong. How I acted was not cool. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say those things. Can you forgive me? Can we try again? Sometimes we don't do that because we're embarrassed and we're prideful and we just keep going this way. But like the power of your words, the power of what you think and how you feel, your ability to reach out to someone and be like, hey, I care and I want to try. That can speak volumes. That can change your life. That can change your relationship. Okay. What do we got? You are fabulous. Thanks for all the content tools. Stop it. You are fabulous. Thank you so much for coming and listening. Okay, as we wrap up here, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have a scenario or a situation they want some help on? We have 6 minutes. While you're thinking about that, the last thing I'll just address is just like stop lying, okay? If someone asks you to do something and you really don't want to do it, if it is a no, say no. Because let me tell you something, it's the best thing you can do sometimes to say no. Because listen to me, when you say yes, but really it's a no, think about how you show up. You're resentful, you're mad, you're half-hearted, you're not listening, you're thinking about how the person is the worst. No one benefits from that. And another beautiful thing, when you can get good at like listening to your inner voice and saying no when it's a no, other people are like, you can do that? I had no idea. I thought I always had to say yes and be resentful and mad my entire life. It's an amazing thing. And I think it's a powerful thing for your kids to see too. And you can do it in a lovely way. You know what? That's not something I'm able to do right now. Thank you so much for asking and for giving the opportunity, but it's a no. There is nothing wrong with that. We're just so scared. Well, that person's going to think I'm bad. Are you really going to know if they think that you're bad? Like, I know we're always going to care what other people think about us, but also what matters is what do you think about you? Hey, proud of you for listening to yourself. You already have a lot of things on your plate. Thanks for being honest. Thanks for not trampling us with more things. The more that you can connect with yourself and listen to yourself and create more confidence in sharing your voice and in sharing how you feel and what you think in a way that's lovely and genuine to you. That's important too. Everyone's voice is different. How we express stuff is different. How I say one thing will be very different than you say the thing. Like even if it's the same words, how you say it, the mannerisms, the facial, the body language, it's going to be different. That's a beautiful thing about being human. But just recognize like whether it's a hard thing to say or it's the truth, there's always a way to say it in a way that you can feel good about. That doesn't mean that you won't feel as nervous as all get out. Of course you will. But if you can expect that, you'll be a little more likely to do it. It's just an emotion that's coming from a thought in your brain. If you can identify that thought and not give it all this power anymore, you'll be able to do those things that you feel like you couldn't do. Oh, you're so welcome. Such good positive food for thought. I especially needed to hear about it's okay to say no. We all do. I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. I think a lot of it is like culture. We think that if to be good and nice, I think especially for women, like we think like, well, to be a good, nice girl and I must always say yes. And if I'm saying no. But I mean, again, think about when you say yes and it's really a no. 9 out of 10 times you're not proud of how you show up. And then you feel guilty and mad and resentful. And then the next thing you know, you're saying yes again when it's a no. So it's okay. It's totally fine for other people to be wrong about you. If you say no and other people are upset or mad, it's okay. It's all right. They're mad because of what they're thinking. Again, it wasn't your intention to be ugly or to be hurtful, right? You are sharing what's true for you. It's way better to say, no, I'm sorry. That's not a good fit for me. Then they can find someone or they can find another way where it is a good fit. Like everyone benefits when you are honest. And I think that that's really important. Again, like I said, like for your kids or your students or whoever is around you that you're influencing for them to see that, hey, I value myself and I care about myself, to know when it's a no and to know when it's actually important for my body and for my health to say no. And even though it's hard and I feel weird about it, I'm going to do it. And you guys, all of this just takes practice. Okay. It's like riding a bike, piano. You just got to keep practicing. And let me tell you this, some days you're going to be awesome at it and some days you're going to be bad at it. And when you feel like you're bad at it, instead of beating yourself up, berating yourself, you just check in like a best friend would do. You're just like, hey, I noticed you're kind of off today. Are you okay? What do you need? I'm really proud of you for who you are and how you're showing up. Got to check in with yourself. You just need that intentionality, that care. It makes all the difference. All right, my gorgeous friends, thank you so much for coming today. It's such an honor for me to be here. I love doing this. I appreciate all of you coming. If you have any further questions or if you have a scenario or a situation that you would like to work through or get some more insight on, send me a message. You can email me, heather@heatherflakecoaching.com. I'm on Instagram, the same handle. I would love to give you a free session and help you work through this and get you on your feet even a little more to communicate with more confidence. Thank you for coming. Be sure to check out all the rest of the talks that are going on this month, the rest of the year over at lifecoachuniversity.com, and go communicate with confidence. What you say has so much meaning and it matters and you can do it. All right. All right, my friends, take care. Love you all. Bye.